Yeah, so
Wow.
we've been able to do, I can introduce some of the things we've done just to try to improve things initially. Iowa is kind of a unique state in terms of, when relative to other programs. Is there any registrant that wants to, be a business in Iowa, they do have to submit a list of accurate products or an up-to-date list of products to us that include a certificate of analysis. When you have to think about it, right, 1,000 businesses, we're dealing with dozens and dozens of businesses that have sometimes hundreds of products, right? It's a lot of work to review all of them. But we do, we are placing higher scrutiny on the intoxicating products. I think, we're comfortable with that position, just really taking those more to task, just knowing that those are requirements that we can enforce, via the administrative rule, and just knowing that, again, the program was not intended, specifically for the intoxicating products. So, if they are able to get through, it's going to be because they actually do pass the muster of the rules. And yeah, but yes, on the analyzer, one of the issues is they're just objectively, there's a lot of, you know, um, we'll say fraudulence in the C of A's submitted with these products. We really don't know a lot about them. Some of the again, these are the only requirements we can enforce. Some of them are a year old, some of them are multiple years old. There's just a lot of, inconsistency on that front. So we would like the ability to test, some of these products if we go on a compliance inspection, and we don't think that a product is under that 0.3 threshold. There are in-field cannabis analyzers now that will give you a pretty again, it's not ISO 17025, right? Like thousands of a, percent accurate or anything like that quantified, but it will tell us very quickly, right? It will tell me the difference between 9% and 0.3%, right? It will tell me if any of these products are way overshooting that threshold. And so we hope, again, trying to be solution oriented while we don't have, while we, I've communicated we would need legislative support for some of these gaps, just trying to do what we can. And I think that will help, just again, give us some teeth, going out in the field and being able to test those real time. I mean, those are being used by Border Patrol. Those are being used by agencies all over the country, law enforcement and regulatory. And this is just going to be Iowa's first one. So, I mean, like I said, it's 2 months in. We were just happy to make the deadline for the alignment. That was our first goal. So we'll continue to figure things out. I did have a couple of other items, just for the board. So there was Dr. Shrug, you did send a note, and actually I was a little bit, surprised by it too. I didn't, I did complete a report, I think back in June that was about the board and, just their roles in maintaining it and what would be the implications if it wasn't present. But I didn't really know what was happening after that. But there was a panel recently, that kind of, again, as a part of alignment, just making decisions on whether there was any boards that could be consolidated or maybe weren't necessary anymore or needed to be maintained. But this is one board, I provided full support, for maintaining and all the important reasons why. And I believe it was of the 215, there was only I think somewhere around 60 that were just maintained as the way as they are. And this was one of those boards. So they definitely recognize the importance. And I did want to talk also just briefly about the board vacancies. So now at this point, again, with Dr. Stoken out, that's the 4 vacancies that we have, which does require all of the current board members to be present at every meeting. So we really can't conduct formal business unless everyone here is present, going forward. I do know we did have a couple of candidates for the pharmacy position. The one will not be able to do it. So I actually, Dr. Webb, I know you'd had a recommendation, so I will reach out to him. And that was a pharmacy recommendation. But I haven't heard any chatter, again, from I usually get notifications from the system if people submit materials. I have not gotten anything on any of the positions. So this is more, welcome to, recommend solutions now or any recommendations you have. But I think in general, it's just a call for you and your network, that if you know of anybody in these specialties, uh, to maybe put a bug in there.
So, sorry. Hi. Sorry. Oh, I'm trying to catch up since I missed the last meeting. Sorry, I was
Yeah.
out of country, and I have a lot of questions. So I guess I'm may just send them or can keep
Yeah,
them
no.
in chat for later. I don't want to take much of the time, but at least if I want to just to get to the main question that I at least have right now on my list. So for the vacancies, how is the department just searching for those candidates out of the reachability? Is it based on a quest to look, or it's open and advertised for people to come in? That's the first question before like having possible candidates to recommend.
Yep. So there is the website that the governor's office hosts that lists the vacancies. We haven't done a specific outreach, I think in probably a couple of years, Dr. Mokadem. We have used the Board of Medicine's listserv before. The Board of Medicine has been supportive, and we've given them a link to that website where the materials are, list the vacancies that we have. And that's their entire listserv. We actually weren't able to get any bites there. Our
Right, but
best.
I mean, how
Oh,
people would
sorry.
know that there's a vacancy, like among those who can or may be qualified, how would they
Yeah.
know that there is a vacancy unless they are actually going and searching that there's a vacancy? I mean, how would that how would this usually? Like, I mean, the pool of possible candidates
Yeah.
would be aware of this position.
Yep. No, that's a good point, and I think we could. We do have a dedicated navigation on our website for the board. I think we haven't added just our almost like a job posting. We haven't.
Okay.
I don't think we have anything on there right now. We've only done outreach, so I will actually talk with comms about adding that. Just our list of vacancies and how to apply.
Okay. I mean, I can. I'll just mention the couple quick questions at least, and then leave something for maybe in a chat. So, so one of the colleagues or like a practitioner, not interested in the vacancy part, but is asking about what you guys personally experience in terms of like timeline of getting certified as a prescriber. Because I mean, I didn't go through that process. I don't know, but anybody have real life number in terms of like the difficulty in the timeline of one of the practitioners is interested. So what does that look like?
You mean in being appointed to the board?
No. As a prescriber,
Oh, there's
one
real.
of the
I mean,
physicians here in the institution.
yeah, Dr. Mokadan, there's no in Iowa, there's no like CME requirement to be to be a certifier. Your license to practice medicine,
How
or be a
comes that?
nurse practitioner, yeah, or a podiatrist is grounds to certify.
But you still have to register, right?
No, you don't. No,
You
it's
don't
the
know. Okay.
patient. Yeah, it's the patients that register. Yeah.
Okay. So the practitioner doesn't even have to report. Okay. Because I haven't done that. And the last thing I will just keep that for the catching up, because everybody's now with the hemp details, the program is coming up. I mean, I still don't understand, because I mean, like for me, it's just a simple math, right? I mean, the 0.3% is a percent, but us as I guess a physician, scientist, medical health professional, or whatever board medically, we're commenting on the safety recommendation of these substances. It's the pharmacology of the amount ultimately, milligram or gram entering the body. So I mean, like if I just tell you, like, do you want 0.3% of Elon Musk's fortune, or like 500% of my like income? I mean, I
Yeah.
guess the numbers doesn't. I mean,
Yeah, no, and that's I think
answer
that's
is
a
obvious, because
very tough
many of
bag
those
to
that you
open.
mentioned right now would
Yeah, no,
cross
no.
the minimum THC level for psychoactive effect. So how is that program running where people can still get that, if it's at least part of it is safety, because it's beyond the 10 minimum milligram of starting having, if you get like a big chocolate bar or whatever.
Yep.
And then we're mostly regulating just the medical condition that that under which at least it could be covered and paid for and advertised. But the amount of THC available just on ground, anybody can get it. What I'm understanding right now. Is that
Yeah.
correct or not?
Yeah, no, I mean I mean in some ways, to simplify it, consumable hemp in its current form, is effectively is legalized edibles, and drinkable products, without a limit on potency.
Yeah.
And I think that that is the crux of the issue, why it is probably again, I mentioned the primary concern of the regulatory community, is again that 0.3% limit was instituted, it applied to the plant, and when the industrial hemp programs were about food and fiber, it was never intended to apply, to non-intoxicating or intoxicating
Right.
product. CBD kind of came first. And then but again, it has not really been worked on or elaborated.
Mm.
There's a lot of jurisdictional type of
Right. I
issues
mean,
with that federally.
no, I understand. I guess like in the justifying it, but I just for the sake of us at least just clearing our mind and being more systematic. I mean, especially because there are two programs. I mean, the hemp is a separate program, and this is a program. But unless it's like somebody's concerned about like weapon safety. I mean, you don't create like just a program for semi-automatic Belgium-produced, guns, and then somebody else will just go like only like the single shot. I mean, if it's a weapon and you think about its safety, I mean, there should be like one program that it assess everything that can harm. Yep. Or if it's gonna stay like that and there's like a lot of bureaucracy with it, I mean, shouldn't or wouldn't be a limit per milligram or per gram on the hemp program, since the compound we're all here to talk about is THC at the end. Because I cannot see this dichotomy like from a scientist standpoint. I can get
and that is what a lot of states you've seen that have moved toward, like even in Minnesota's bill that just passed, that can created adult use but consolidated medical cannabis and the cannabinoid hemp all within that new agency. There was a similar situation in Maryland, where Maryland just did the same thing, where it's just one agency that looks over all of them. But again, similarly, they're using, per serving and per container based limits, in the medical and adult use cannabis programs, and instituting some amount, that's able to be purchased over a given period of time. They're doing it similarly for their cannabinoid hemp programs, where they're instituting limits on how much that hemp product, how much THC it can have per serving, and how much it can have per container, because again, that gets us to a point where we're probably looking at it, more the way that it, again, the way that it should be versus a percentage-based limit, which is not, again, as I think we've all learned, a limit. I don't think that's unreasonable. Those are the same rules, right, that medical cannabis and adult use licensees have been operating under for some time.
Owen, can I jump in just to clarify? When this committee began, the 0.3% existed on our product.
It was 3%.
Okay, 3%. But we were wise enough to realize the fallacy in that, and we did create a limit of 4.5 grams. All right, for our product. So we did get to the gram. And obviously now when we're caught up in, we probably need to be going in the same direction with the hemp products, okay, about this somehow limiting the grams.
Yeah, like I said, we wouldn't have a centralized system or anything like that, like we do for cannabis for purchasing, I don't believe. But I think we can, like I said, we can look at what other states are doing. We're talking about just ways that, like I said, potent, more milligram based at the serving and container level. That's more what a lot of states are looking at.
Yeah, I mean, even with chronic use, because I mean you can get a small limit, but like per amount, because the chronic of 3 milligram per day is different from even like 10 or 15 ones. I mean, stuff like that. Even if there is gonna be another separate recreation program that might develop in the future or not, if the whole idea is safety, I mean, somebody has to look at it from a big umbrella rather than just, well, because somebody called that hemp and somebody called this cannabis and marijuana, but we're supposed to be a medical cannabinoid. We're interested in the pharmacobiology and then the bioavailability of a product that might have impact on people, safety or not, medical condition for which it's recommended or not, at what dose or not. But if there's a lot of beating around you, I mean, at least we should at least voice something that looks like we're not probably achieving that or minimally achieving that. That's just going to be my comment. I don't want to take more time.
Yeah, no, these are all good comments, Dr. Mokadem, because I think that's what we're figuring out, both with this shared bureau, right? Is we can recognize there's definitely plenty of similarities and overlap, even though it's really weird. And there's a reason, for kind of one group to be looking over both of these, but do we know what it looks like? Yeah, no, we really don't. And I think that was, it's good for us to have this conversation here, because I think that's how we're going to look at it, right? Is whether we're talking medical or this, we're still looking at it with a public health and safety eye. That's why we indicated those specific issues, even though there might be many that we could talk about, labeling or marketing or what have you. We kind of indicated those top three, because that's what we will have to do now, right? We'll have to look at both programs in relation to each other. How, what we can apply to one, to both, what can't be applied to the other. So I think we're going to be having plenty of discussions about that, in particular over the next year. But I just would say that this is, I'll say that again, figuring out how this should work and how it blends with the other regulated programs is probably the greatest regulatory challenge right now in cannabis for any state. Because when there's that federal, piece of it that they're in charge of that, isn't being acted on, it leaves it up to the states, just like with cannabis, to try and navigate it. Nothing we're not accustomed to. So.
Thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, Owen, one quick question sparked by one of the questions in the Q&A. I know we had made a comment or a recommendation about having APP representation on the board, but as of now, is it still just MDs, DOs, and then PharmD?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would need, in the statute, it specifically calls out the disciplines, and so they would have to be added to it.
Okay, great.
So, and I did have just on I know there was mention of the second manufacturer update. I know we haven't given you one in a while, and I will have them, it's always better to hear it from them. So I'll have them in November, but they do have a complete facility. We've been working with them pretty closely over the last, 6-8 months. They've, all the permitting is in order. Everything was finalized, and they are, up and running at this point, with plants in the ground. So that is, that's an exciting thing for the program. So we actually do have something we can backtrack now, in terms of having multiple manufacturers in the state. But again, I think it's better to hear from them specifically, so I'll invite them to the next meeting. I did just some national updates. I'll just mention briefly, just talking about some of this, consumable hemp, and again, regulatory priority. The group that we've been working with over the last few years, just the regulatory network, did submit, and I think even Dr. Schreck, you shared some of that. We provided a report on just some of our recommendations and, the big list of things we would want, right, if there was real action on it. So I linked that here, and you all can check that out. And then I just did want to mention briefly, just since I think Carl did mention it also, is just that leaked HHS recommendation to the DEA about rescheduling. I think there's been plenty of chatter about it, whether or not you've been paying attention. I think there's plenty of pros and cons depending on who you ask. Again, the program would still be illegal, right? If it's any schedule, doesn't change that fact. It might be easier for some of the banking and tax things that have been discussed. Research certainly would be easier, but I think it also may, then you're talking like real deal, drug path, type of things, and where does that fit in? And there could be a whole nother situation of regulatory issues that aren't really foreseen yet. So if there's anything that materializes on this, I'm happy to update the board later. But even if they were to go down this, this path, it would still take, months or years. And I think, most of in talking with other regulators, we're just going to continue on the path as it is. Because we've just learned how long it takes things to change, and we've heard this and that, and it never really materializes. So I just kind of wanted to give just a high level 2 cents on that we're really, until there's anything more material, we're not thinking too hard about it. So just on that, from an update on numerous things, were there any other questions that the board had?
Oh, is this what you labeled open swim on the agenda?
Yep. Yeah, like I said, I just know that like you said, we've had a lot going on, the last couple months, and we haven't spoken a lot this summer, so just wanted to see if there was anything we could talk about, or like I said, do research for the final meeting.
I mean, I could, as you know, I could talk for an hour, but I won't. Just interesting numbers here. I looked up how many physicians there are licensed in Iowa. It was just over 4,500. There are just over 7,300 nurse practitioners licensed in Iowa, and 1,300 physician's assistants. I couldn't find out how many podiatrists there are, but let's say there's 150 of those. That's 13,200 people able to certify. And if you do the math on the number of people who've actually done certifications, that's about 15% of the Iowa medical professionals who can legally certify have actually certified at least one person. So it's a vast majority of practitioners have not done so. Many of them are not in a position to do so, and who knows how many of these people that are licensed are still practicing. How many of them are practicing, reading X-rays and not even interacting with patients and so forth, and how many of them have dropped out for the time being. But it's a distinct minority of certified practitioners that are actually certifying. Just an interesting number here. Also, if I read this right, when you talk about active cards, we're talking about cards that are legally active, that have some time left on their 1 year duration. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they've made any purchases, as I recall.
No. And if you look at the dispensary visits data, it's
Right.
broken out into unique visits, and then total visits.
Right.
So if you look at, I think it's usually around, let me see here if I could go back. So 5,300 unique patients visited last month to complete a purchase. If there's 18,000 patients, that's a little bit less than a quarter.
I did the math. It's 39%. So what it means is 60% of, unless I misinterpret what you mean by in the previous 12 months, 60% of those people with active cards are not purchasing, or they're purchasing infrequently. In fact, if you take the total number of unique visits and the number of active cards, the average active card patient is making 1.7 visits per year.
Yeah.
You're going, more than 6 months between visits to make a purchase on average. Obviously, because a lot of people don't make any purchases at all, but that's on the average.
Yeah, and that especially relates to the space between dispensaries, or just the geographic. So I mean, we don't always have that, because I think there are, we see obviously a higher volume in Des Moines where there's a higher population base, but a lot of the other dispensaries, they have they have fewer transactions, but like a higher ticket price, as people are purchasing more.
And people that return to purchase are one group of people, those who, but we don't know why that 60% is not purchasing. It may be that they tried it in years past, and they found out it didn't do anything. I think that's going to be a large percentage of people that are going to try medical cannabis and find it's disappointing in its benefits. But at least they've had a chance to try. There's some, I'm sure, that it's too expensive. That's a big group, I'm sure. They just can't afford to do it, even though it provided some benefit. And of course, they're, as we heard, very, emotionally and plaintively, the availability with the number of dispensaries, it's just hard to get there. If you got to drive 2 hours every month or 6 weeks to pick up some more and spend a couple $100, that's that's a lot to ask. Well, I don't have a solution for that, but that's certainly reasons why they would drop out.
Yep.
That's
And I
that's a
will
lot of
say,
numbers.
Dr. Shrek, I mean, I think we were, towards the end of last year, just even, the talks of it, and this year we've certainly been very wrapped up in alignment, but we do still have, again, I think we have a little bit better of a budget situation. And, I think once we get our arms around this from a staffing standpoint, we still can do the observational study, especially being a few years in without any mechanical changes, to the program. I think we've talked internally about really wanting to get that done this year.
We were cautioned by some outside expert a couple of years ago that to look for signs that your program is being abused, you should look for increasing numbers of young males dominating the market. As I look at the figures we have here, that doesn't seem to be the case. They also said, watch out for high potency THC, which of course we've got, but we've had that from the start. And of course, the preferred form is vaporizable because, for two reasons. One is you get the benefit right away, and number two, you can titrate much easier than you can with oral or any other form of administration. I thought it was particularly interesting that for seizures, as an adverse condition, medical condition, not a lot of people, but there's a couple hundred of them. Most of them are taking the high potency THC, but in fact, it's the CBD that's beneficial. But again, why somebody ends up continuing to take medical cannabis may not be the reason they started taking it. And that's what have been one of my big concerns, is that you start off hoping that your seizures will be controlled. You start off that your pain will be better, but if you get enough or you take it a bunch at a time, you discover a new benefit, if you want to call it that, a new experience, and that's called euphoria. And you can be totally naive to cannabis, to THC, and discover this through our medical program. And this is one of my biggest concerns, is that we are creating a market in euphoria inadvertently because of the way our program is structured. We've seen this in other drugs. We see this in alcohol. We've seen this in opiates. Number of people who are addicted to these substances who have to have another is there. It's certainly there's cannabis abuse, syndrome, which occurs and is not unusual. And we, as a medical program, we should try to prevent that. And of course, I think we did a good job with our 4.8 or 4.5 grams in 90 days. Somebody would have to completely take a lot of it in a few days and then do without in order to experience that. And then they couldn't get more. But with the waiver program, we're particularly at risk with that. And I feel personally responsible here because the idea of a waiver came from board members when we met with legislators and they were stuck on the dose issue. And it seemed like a legitimate compromise. Let's offer a waiver. We already had a waiver for terminally ill people, which I think is not an issue to anybody. If they want to get stoned, that's fine with them. But we do the same thing with opiates for them in cancer medicine. But it's for the average citizen trying to go to work and maintain relationships and a job and personal responsibilities. You don't want to create another population of people. As Governor Reynolds said to a couple of us in a meeting, we don't need another psychoactive drug on the streets of the states of Iowa, cities of Iowa. But we created this, and there's two ways of bringing it under control. One way would be to change the law to get rid of the waiver, or have it restricted in some way, but that would require legislation. And the other way would be to go to the certifiers. And we've talked about this in the past. And here I'd make a pitch that we do so. If you look at the medical literature, which we've done in detail, there is no support whatsoever for euphoric doses of THC in medical benefit. It's not there. In fact, to the contrary, there are recommendations that 15 milligrams a day is plenty if it's spread out and taken properly of THC. We allow 50 milligrams a day, 3 times that, even with our 4.5 gram limitations. The state of Utah recommends start low, go slow, get up to 15 milligrams per day, not beyond that. So this is not a strange recommendation or a strange idea. And I think we should, as a board and as a department, owe it to the certifiers of Iowa to educate them in this regard. As I recall, you yourself said when you contacted some of these people who certified for large amounts, they were themselves unaware of the consequence of what they were doing and the medical literature that supports cannabis but also limits cannabis. So I would, make a proposal that we as a board come up with a publication, a paper, a statement, a position paper, if you will, outlining this, that we cite the medical journals and articles that support these limitations, and we make sure we get this in front of the certifiers of Iowa, using their societies, perhaps even using the lay press, which I think would have a big impact, because everybody would read that. We just need to come up with a document that the board and the department are comfortable with, which we know is supported by evidence-based medicine. I think that is the circumstance. We just have to compose it. So that's one of 2 points I was hoping to make, and I'll stop right there to see if anybody else has any comments to make or discussions about that.
Steve Richards, I'm going to back up what Bob said about us coming up with an official position about what's medical and what's not medical in that regard. But for what it's worth, if you want to hear about it, come to the Iowa Academy of Family Physicians meeting in Galena in October. I've got 2 sessions trying to educate people about the endocannabinoid system and what it actually does and the effects that it has. So, but Bob, you're right. We need, that's what we need to do. And the lay press is where this belongs. Okay, about what's medical and what's not medical, and do our best to do that, because that's the answer. This is the opioid world all over again. Opioids were safe in cancer patients, therefore they're safe in all patients. Well, we found out that's not really true, and we're going to discover the same thing with this thing called medical marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've spoken, I don't think we actually put anything in motion previously, but we could certainly put a committee together to put, decide, determine how long that should be, what should be included, what channels we use. I could take volunteers from that. I just do think, the department, I certainly think we would like to have our say in what anything like that would look like. But if there is board support for that, I take comment from any other board members, and we could certainly make a motion to put a subcommittee together. I know we haven't had any subcommittee work. I think maybe in the better part of a year now. But if there was interest in, making a motion to provide a formal document, if you want to consider it, the medical doses for cannabis and how to distribute it to the right medical agencies.
And this is Steve Richards, and I will make that motion, and I'll volunteer to serve, because I think it's what we have to do to try and do some control, try and make this a medical program.
I'd also participate in the committee, especially to give information about the psychiatric related conditions that are part of our program.
Yeah. Were there any other, I know you kind of proposed it, Dr. Schreck, but I did want to I know Dr. Mokadem, you'd mentioned interest in previously being on any committees, so I did want to at least give you
sure. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Would you be comfortable with that, Dr. Schreck? And I don't think there's any limit on how large a subcommittee can be. I'll check on it, but if it's important enough, I think we can include everybody.
Thank you. Yes.
I've been on most of the subcommittees we've organized over the years, partly because I have time. I'm still active in our group. I still participate, but I don't have, a schedule full of patients every day. So it's I've got time to do so. I have confidence in my colleagues to come up with I think they all have great minds. The definition of a great mind, meaning somebody who agrees with me, which I think is a great definition. I've got confidence. I'll leave it to them.
Sounds good. Well, I think we kind of got the committee together, and I can take that as a first motion from Dr. Richards and a second from Dr. Weber. Were there any other comments on that? So Andrea and I, we'll have that documented, and I'll largely probably have Andrea be coordinating with you on that. I mean, she is our attorney and pharmacist. So I think that'll be a good, for her to understand the subcommittee work. I'll probably have her delegate that to her.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment too that for people who are paying attention to kind of recent stuff, the FDA did make the recommendation recently that cannabis be moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3.
Yep.
And so I don't know what's going to happen with that, but
well, that's what I was talking is like it was actually like I don't know that the FDA didn't confirm anything. I thought it was like HHS.
Oh, maybe it
had
was
a memo.
HHS. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was like
I
HHS
think you're correct.
had a memo, recommending Schedule 3 to the DEA, I believe.
But
And
I wanted to bring it up because it reminds me of just I think being a part of this medical board, there's a lot of humility with the sense that we would love to have better research than we have. And it just reminds me of how prohibitive good research has been with kind of the scheduling and structure around cannabis so far. And so I say that more to address, like, we have so many great people who come and share their experiences and their opinions and their expertise about cannabis and hemp and stuff. And I really appreciate that. And I think sometimes we are limited, as the medical advisory board by what's available to us as far as quality medical literature. And sometimes that's just not as good as we want it to be. So I was just humbled by that. If it does get schedule change, I think that would be a positive thing in the realm of being able to do good research on cannabis, but just
thank you for bringing that up. Actually, I'm just about to send you, I don't know if you guys before are aware or might have attended some of those meetings on cannabinoid medical, recreational, scientific. Some of them are like pure basic science. Some of them are just like medical health. So there's one of the bigger one. I just get updates on it. Is the international. So it's multiple countries. This year is got in Germany, in Frankfurt, and December 4 or 5. But I'm not sure if they have actually a Zoom participation rather than you have to travel obviously for those meetings. But I'll send the link if any of you are interested, because as I guess Andrea mentioned, on top of our job, legislative safety wise, but updates in terms of scientifically and health benefits, and like both sides and what's happening not just around the other states, like all around the world. So yep. I don't know if any of you had experience from attending those meetings. I was planning to do one in the future, but I'll send the link just in case you guys want me to.
Yeah, no, we'd be.
Please do. Please send it. Thank you.
Yep. Was there, any other, questions or just anything that the board had?
Well, number 2 on my agenda, I'm concerned about the marketing. Again, I've mentioned earlier, I'm proud of our manufacturer. They're great scientists. They do great work. They've got a great system set for manufacture, for safety, and so forth. The marketing seems to have, as we discussed a year ago, gone far afield from medicine. I relooked at the website. It's better, actually. I don't know if it's because of the department's efforts or what.
Yeah, no, I would say, Dr. Streck, we did work with them on the providers. So for both manufacturers, there's now no provider links. Even the link that does take you there, it's just to Google search, which has our program as the top, the top search query. Right. So that should be cleaned up, and we've been clear on our stance with referring providers.
Well, even the graphics are better. They got rid of the fun lifestyle people, yucking it up and so forth. But still, I think there's still work to do. If you review the website and go through its various permutations, and it's quite lengthy, and of course, only part of it applies to Iowa. What they can promote in Colorado is different. They've got a recreational program there. But when it comes to Iowa, there's still terms. I won't list them all. I think you are aware of them, that have nothing to do with medicine that I can see. There's terminology that's used. There's an appeal to terpenoids, which to my knowledge has no scientific basis whatsoever, and as a differentiating feature for the different products. I'll have to look again at the referral to Presto Doctor and to the referral to the Green Clinic. But I thought that on their website, there was a direct link to those online.
Yeah, no, that should,
flyers.
those have been removed. Yeah, and we did, so their webs, in terms of, again, the provider referrals, we've been clear, and those should be cleaned up. And I would say that we did, where I think we're still gonna have to find out if we can, if it's enough to include it in a rule, or it would take it in or it would require statute. But we did include the Board of Medicine's standards for telemedicine, rules for standards of telemedicine, in our red tape review.
Right. It sounds like you've had some success, because it is much better. Thank you for doing so. That's all I have.
Perfect. And we'll, like I said, we worked with them on just that issue. And then we obviously have our submissions for, red tape that we'll be working with them on. And they've also, the industry's been aware of those for some time. So. If there's nothing else, I think we can go on to kind of what will ultimately end up being our last agenda item. Captain McKelvey.
Owner, are you talking about item 6 on the
Yeah, I think we can, because I think we kind of discussed the board vacancies and just kind of what we can do there. And I mean, I think we can even talk a little bit about that in the subcommittee for the kind of medical dosing guidance.
Right. Okay. So item 6 is just a preliminary discussion on the board's recommendations for its 2023 annual report to the legislature. We'll discuss those recommendations from last year, as well as any new proposals from the members.
So everyone, again, this is just kind of the meeting where we have that introductory conversation. And I think it's, it's important to know that, if we go back to the 5 years of this kind of, commercial program that we have, we've really just had the one bill in 2020, which was, that initial expansion bill to correct it to 3%, that whole bill. But for the past 3 years, so the 2020 report, 21, 22, we have not had any bills. So our list from last year has really just been, a refined list from the year previously. And really, I think we've also learned too that when we're talking recommendations for statute edits, and sometimes it, brevity is going to be better versus having a really long list of items. So I just first wanted to, this is more as, again, giving the floor to you all, but I wanted to see if there was anything in the list from last year that you wanted to maybe talk more about, refine, get an update on how it's going still in terms of necessitating a recommendation, and just if there's anything else that you wanted to include. So that way, like I said, we could draft something or get some research for you over the next couple months. So I'll just kind of give the floor to you all and share this up here, and we can go to any of the recommendations that you're curious about. So I think maybe to give an overview, I think, changing this to the Medical Cannabis Act, I think we can still maintain it. It is helpful. I mean, I think you probably are aware that at this point, again, just to be, the education burden got to be, pretty significant. It still is. There's still a huge amount of confusion about what our program is, what consumable hemp is, right? So we have been using, for public purposes, that, cannabis at this point. So it's not as big of an issue, but we can maintain that. Dispensaries are probably one of our biggest, we talked about that over and over. I think that's why, again, we have this in the kind of the 2 spot. We've had herb anecdotes every board meeting for numerous years that patients, travel quite a bit. It's a pretty big deterrent to participation in the program. This removing sales tax has been on the list since 2020. Dr. Weber, this is what you'd actually mentioned about having a PA or ARNP on the board. And we even give them, I think I would like to even give, if let's say we keep a similar list, even give additional clarification you know, and what the recommendations for these would be. I think at the very least we can do that for an update. We did this was one that was new to last year, if you remember, you know, decoupling Iowa state taxes for businesses from federal tax code for 280E, which would allow them to, at least in Iowa, take the standard deductions as other businesses and reduce their effective tax rate. This is something we were not able to do in rule. So I think with the red tape update, I think this is something that we were going to try to do. But again, the confidential file is what it's called in the statute, is so closed down that we would have to be given, the legislature would have to give us specific access to give information back to the provider. So that's just definitely needs to stay. You know, we talked about improving this. So this at least was one thing where in our red tape review, we do have the Board of Medicine's standards of practice for telemedicine. And we'll just have to, again, if we get any pushback, if we don't have the authority to do that, or if it doesn't have any teeth, we'll just have to figure that out through that process. And then this is what Carl had mentioned in his public comment, and was from last year also, you know, which was just to put, you know, assemble a legal task force to maybe help with the navigation, you know, of that issue. But yeah, I think it's all tied, you know, right? It seems like every 6 months or so we have some new conversation about, you know, rescheduling or this or that, or so I mean, this is all tied to that, you know, and you can see that obviously have a lot on their hands at the federal level. So just with that intro, you know, is there any comment, or for now, would the board prefer to kind of keep this list, you know, and refine it and focus on brevity? And then again, anything between now and November, you'd be willing, you could, you know, you'd be happy, you know, you're welcome to send me and we can do a final vote in November, because that still gives us time, again, to finalize anything else before submission is due in December.
I'm fine with it. I mean, for me right now.
Dr. Weber, did you have any comment?
I was just gonna say, I mean, I still support kind of all the recommendations that we had made. Whether we prioritize something, whether by effectiveness or how long it's been an issue we've been talking about, I guess is up to us for discussion, but I still support all the things that we've been recommending.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this has been a good list, and I think we've focused on, because if you remember back to 2020, I think it was 12 of the 13 recommendations were taken. I believe that's what it was. So sticking to a shorter list, you know, I think is helpful. You know, I think this is, like I said, we have a lot of context for providing these recommendations. A lot of them are 3 years old at this point. So.
Bob Schreck here under, I forget what the number is, number 8.
Yep.
I think. Seek a federal exemption for Iowa's program. You know, this is Carl Olson's issue. Yep. And he's quite determined and on it. And he seems to think that based on precedent elsewhere on a different compound, different phytopharmaceutical, that we have an avenue for success here. And we recommended, as I recall, that the department pursue this. And in fact, I don't remember the contents of House File 2589 back in June of 2020, but that did pass. And yet Carl tells us that the department has been absent on this issue, is making no efforts, is not pursuing these efforts. Is that the case? Is that a defensible position in light of what we've recommended and what the legislation called for?
At this point, I'd even have to go back and refresh myself on the whole thing. But I do believe, you know, in our mind, you know, at this point, we've made those recommendations to those agencies. We've kind of run its course, I think, in terms of what we can do currently. You know, we'll discuss it more with, you know, if there's any more requests to, you know, going into the session. But I think, yeah, I think we'll, like I said, we've done the work that we feel that, you know, we kind of can at this point. It's going to take a little bit larger engagement, I think, to go any further.
as it took me a long time to understand what Carl was talking about. I think he operates at an intellectual and maybe even an ethical level above mine. He's obviously offended by the fact that we are breaking federal law, even though the feds aren't. They're not enforcing it. But he sees a mechanism to make us good and legal, to get us an exemption like has been done for other chemical elsewhere. So I admire his persistence. I admire his ethics. I'm not sure it would change what happens on the ground, even if we did succeed. We'd still be, facing some other restrictions and so forth, but we would no longer be breaking federal law. We'd no longer be criminals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, Carl's work is admirable. Obviously I've worked with Carl since I've been here. I think I would really need to refresh myself on it overall. But again, I do know we made those requests, and that was different than what Carl had wanted us to do. So I just have to, refresh myself on the situation. But so I think if that is the case, I just wanted to refresh the board's, understanding of these, just for newer members, make them aware that, some of these have been on here for a few years now. Obviously we have no idea of the possibility of traction, or the appetite, for medical cannabis bill, this year. I think we've also mentioned, just as it relates to consumable hemp, there's pretty large gaps there also, that require work. So, we'll have to see what the session holds, but I think we can, for now, if we want to vote to, kind of refine and maintain these ones, while we have the group here, we can do that. And then we still have one more meeting to finalize them. So next meeting will come with kind of a final refined version, for the board to vote on.
So Owen, do you just want to all in favor of moving that direction vote?
Yeah, that's fine. We don't need a roll call though. It can just be
Right.
favor.
So is there a motion then to do what Owen just said, kind of take this, maybe refine it a little bit, and take a final vote here in the November meeting?
I second what you just said, that Owen said. All right.
Okay. All right. I'll go down as the first and Dr. Shark as the second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay.
Aye.
All right. All right. Thank you. That one carries. Item 8, future meetings. Owen, right now, you had November 10th on there. We know because of the shortage on vacancies, it'll be virtual. Is November 10 for sure, or is that still tentative?
Yeah, with Dr. Mokadam, that's kind of what just knowing
Yeah.
that we don't have the members, I would prefer to kind of like reconfirm schedules just to make
Okay.
sure that all 5 of us can meet virtually. So we'll keep it
definitely.
TBD.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would like to attend all of them. I don't want to skip any unless last time was a out of the country issue. But so I'm traveling that day to DC, to the NIH. I have a committee meeting, so we can. It depends on the time. Is it going to be the same time? I mean, I can.
Yeah,
I haven't
no,
booked the flight
we'll
yet, but I have to fly on the 10th, so I can. If the time is flexible, we can discuss it later. Or if there are other options within that same week, I'm open to that too.
November 10th is Veterans Day. It's a state holiday.
Right.
Okay.
And on November 10th, I am flying to Washington, DC for the American Medical Association meeting.
Correct. Yeah, no, sounds like we'll be moving it, and I will just coordinate with you all and just making the public aware that we will be moving that. It will be virtual, because we do just need to make sure that, the members that we have can all meet.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing else, Kevin, Kelly, I think we can move on to adjournment. I just did want to, thank everybody for joining us today. Again, while this is medical cannabis, right, it was proper to provide consumable hemp update, for many reasons to the board. So we'll figure out what that looks like, over time, but worthwhile for today, I think. Over to you, Captain McKelvey.
All right. Item 9, we've come to the end of our agenda. Are there any further comments from our board members? Okay, if not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Dr. Mokedam, do we have a second?
Second.
Dr. Weber, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Thank you. The motion carries. This meeting is officially adjourned at 11:55 a.m.
Well, thank you again, everyone, and have a great weekend all. Thank you. We'll talk to you in a couple months.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.